Hello there and welcome. In this video I'm just going to give you a few thoughts about advanced or post-test training. I've recently had a comment from one of my viewers who's done Bike Safe and he's doing his Institute of Advanced Motorists, and he made some observations there that often he's commented on about progress. And interesting, over the years, one thing I've heard a lot about with post-test or advanced training, whatever you'd like to call it, is that people are sometimes a bit concerned with the fact that they're always being pushed to make absolute progress. Some of the criticisms that you'll often hear from your instructors, observers, mentors, trainers, whatever you'd like to call them, is that you'll be picked up for doing 57 in a national, 28 in a 30, etc, etc. Missing overtakes is something that's commented on quite a lot, and some people have found that this is quite unhelpful towards their training or development. Not everyone. And I have found people who have come away from certain organisations because of this emphasis on progress. And I'm often asked, well, what are my thoughts? So, my thoughts are this. I think any form of post-test or advanced training is generally a good idea. One size does not necessarily fit all, and the origins of advanced training generally come from roadcraft, from police style of rider training. And although many organisations that dish out this training now are nationally accredited, they have national standards, and everyone should be singing off the same hymn sheet, you're always going to get variances in what people find acceptable or what's desirable or what meets the standard. There's always an interpretation of the rules and guidelines. As a rider, we've all got different perceptions of what we find enjoyable in motorcycling. And I know for some that going fast and going around bends fast and leaning the bike over can be an absolute gold standard of what they consider to be fun motorcycling. I also know of other people who that is not fun for at all. They do not enjoy that. What they want to do is just follow the speed limits, ride at a pace that they feel is correct and comfortable for them, enjoy the ride, enjoy the scenery. And I wouldn't say either is wrong. For me, it's all about safety. And that's a very broad word, isn't it, when we come to motorcycling? Or in fact any road use. What is safe? And what is safe can vary very much dependent on the circumstances at that moment in time. It can depend on you as a rider, your abilities, your thoughts, your brain processes. We're all different at the end of the day. Not everyone can ride to an incredibly fast standard and be incredibly safe. Some people can ride very fast but are not safe, but they just don't have that that safety margin in their brain, so they're quite happy to do whatever they want to do. And the fact that they're surviving and not having a collision is very often due to luck rather than skill. But of course, because nothing happens, there's no judge of that. So why the big emphasis on speed then? What does it prove? Well, when it comes to advanced or post-test training, it proves to a degree that you have some form of extra mastery of your bike. Now, that's not the be-all and end-all, and there's so much more to it than that. It isn't necessarily the gold standard, but once we've seen that someone can physically ride a bike in a reasonable fashion, that they can change gears smoothly, that they're riding to a system if that's what's required, gear changes are good, if their hazard perception is good, if they're reacting to hazards well. Progress can be a very important part of what we're asking you to do. And what that demonstrates to an examiner or an instructor is that you're taking the ride to that next level. You see, some people will say, I don't want to ride fast, it doesn't suit me, that's not my style. And that might be true, but is that because you are afraid of the bike, or you're actually scared of going faster? Is it you just don't have the ability, and because you're keeping your speed low, that's about as far as you can go to maintain your standards of safety? And in all fairness, having an awareness of that is a good thing. But for those of you that want to be labelled as a advanced rider, I'm afraid making good, safe, sensible progress does come as part of the territory of your advanced training. This is where the enhanced rider scheme differs a little bit to what we would call advanced training. The enhanced rider scheme sits quite nicely anywhere after test, and it's there to help people just get better and do more than they've done at test level. And it doesn't necessarily have to come as a advanced ride. It can be not quite IAM ROSPA Police Class 1 standard, but it's certainly a standard we would hope that exceeds what would be expected to be seen at test standard. And an example of that is, as I said to a student the other day, for example, if you straight line a roundabout in your test, there's no discussion about that. The examiner is probably, in all likelihood, going to fail you. With an enhanced rider scheme or an advanced lesson, we can look at such manoeuvres and we can say, why did you straight line that roundabout? And assess it on all factors present at the time. And if the student turns around to me and says, I don't know really, I just did, then I'm going to say, no, that's not acceptable, you shouldn't be doing it, because you can put yourself at risk. But when the student comes back and says, I straight lined a roundabout because I wasn't going to interfere with another road user, it kept the bike upright, its stability was enhanced, gave me a cleaner, smoother line through the roundabout, I knew there was no traffic coming up on my offside and wasn't going to confuse anyone anywhere else. Absolutely right, fantastic, good manoeuvre. So as regards progress then, if I take somebody out and they are significantly below the speed limit at all times, they never attempt an overtake even when there is an obvious need or opportunity for the overtake, I have to assess the ability of the rider. Questions in my mind are, have we got learning needs here? Have we got confidence needs? Have we got just basic concentration needs? If you're missing things that are blatantly obvious, does it mean your brain's not on your riding? Does it mean you are clearly focusing on what you're having for tea tonight, for example? You can't say that someone is an advanced rider if they're not paying attention to the road and reacting to what's going on around them. And some riders will use that as an excuse. I just don't want to go fast. But it's not that. You're just actually not paying attention. You haven't got the ability to hold that attention, and that's why you can't complete these manoeuvres. Or maybe you don't have the knowledge or the skill. And we're looking for that knowledge and skill. That's the whole point of being a rider who is more than just test standard. However, I think it's very important that when we train anybody, that we have to look at the whole picture, and we shouldn't be pushing people into riding ridiculously fast and just saying, oh, you're a 2 mile an hour under the speed limit there. And also, when you have a student who is explaining their reasoning for being below the speed limit, that's part of an advanced ride. That's part of the thought processes. We always talk about a thinking rider. We want you to be a thinking rider. But when your student's saying, I was below the speed limit because there are driveways, there are junctions, the wind's extra high, there's so many factors. Maybe I've been out for a couple of hours and I'm tired. Then at the end of the day, very legitimate reasons for altering your ride. But to just keep beating someone constantly about progression and being 2 or 3 mile an hour under the speed limit, that isn't helpful for people's development. I've always said, if you're reading the road and doing what you're supposed to be doing with good observations, good hazard perception, Extra speed comes as a byproduct. If you're actually trying to ride faster, then you're not doing it right. And the other thing is, if you find that your provider of your training does not suit your needs, or you're not getting to where you need to be, then always find somebody else and go and look at a different way of doing things. I think that's very important as well. At Enhanced Rider Scheme level, I am not looking for all-out progress. What I'm looking for is an understanding of road positioning, hazard perception, reaction, defensive riding. And progress is part of ERS. It's on the sheet there, use of speed. But it's not the be-all and end-all. It's just part of the picture. The considerations I give into training are, if someone is just sitting like I'm doing now, just sitting with the traffic. Now, is my brain working to think about progress and getting on with it? Am I assessing everything? Or have I actually half gone to sleep and I'm just following the car in front? And any student who just rides like that suggests that maybe they're not paying as much attention as they should be. It's another reason why progress is an indicator of levels of attention, because it shows planning, it shows strategy and awareness. It's much easier just to blindly follow vehicles in front than it is to react to circumstances. But a big criticism I have heard is people who are not ready to be pushed for every overtake and every high speed manoeuvre. And that is very damaging. Some people are just not ready for it, and you've got to coax those along gently and give them the tools to be able to achieve, rather than just forcing them into something that they find very unhelpful or intimidating. So as a general overview then, as I said, advanced or post-test training I think is very useful. There are different sorts out there. You've got the Enhanced Rider Scheme, which is pitched above test standard but not necessarily all the way up to advanced standard. ROSPA and IAM, yeah, they'll give you advanced certificates. They've got their various schemes and gradings. And there's also other instructors and schools that set up and just offer their own form of post-test training to enhance people along the way. Whatever you choose, you'll get something out of it in most occasions, I would suggest. For me, it's just about learning new skills, new techniques that are more likely to make you safe and keep you alive, keep you away from having an incident. That's all I'm interested in. Some people like the IAM ROSPA type training because it involves being part of a social group and they enjoy that, and that's great. As I've got older, that's not so much for me personally. What I would say is, if you have had an experience that doesn't suit you with post-test training, don't let it put you off. If you feel you would like a refresher or to develop further your skills, do go and talk to somebody else. You may well find that they will be able to help you and bring a lot more confidence into what you do on your bike. It's not all about progress, and that's the bottom line. However, there is a reason that when we train people post-test, we like to see sensible, safe progress. Not least because it shows ability and how your brain is working. If you're too slow in certain circumstances, you aggravate other road users, and being on a two-wheeler, you put yourself at risk, and that can be a big issue. A classic example is you join a dual carriageway at 55 mile an hour when everyone's coming down at you, like between 70 and 90 miles an hour, and you're sat there at 55 and everyone's on the brakes and trying to scrub past you. You know, you just put yourself at risk by not using appropriate levels of speed to get going and progression. If you can do 70 in those circumstances, do 70, get on with it. I even used to say to a lot of my test candidate students, get on with it. You know, don't just wait for something to happen. Make your progress. Get away from the trouble behind you. Another classic example, leaving a roundabout. We go around the roundabout with all the due care that's required, which is absolutely fantastic. We leave the roundabout and we don't accelerate. and we've got a clear road ahead of us, and what's the next thing? You've got a car right up your rear end. Get up to the speed limit if it's safe and legal to do so. Completely different matter when you're out riding on your own and you're out and there's no other traffic about, and you think, I just fancy pottering around today, having a look at the world go by. I'm still going to keep my brain processes going on the road, but I don't want to go fast. That's fine. Why should you? No one says you have to. I'll often do that. But when I see in my mirrors some vehicle coming up behind me pretty quick, I then make a decision. Do I pull over and let them go, or do I adjust my speed to what is reasonable and legal and take away that problem? So in summary, it's not all about the speed, it's not all about the progress, but being able to use that vehicle in an appropriate way and react appropriately to speeds and speed limits is an important part of training. It's an important part of being an advanced motorcyclist. It's also being an important part of being a motorcyclist that holds a full licence. But if we're nitpicking 1 or 2 miles an hour when there's a reasonable justification for not being absolutely on the speed limit, then I don't think that's very helpful in training. That's just nitpicking, and it's not of any real benefit. You could argue as well, of course, that most speedometers read slightly over what the actual road speed is, as a lot of you will know with sat-navs. You can see this discrepancy. Speed has to be appropriate for all circumstances, and of course the speed limit is exactly that. It's a limit, an upper limit, and not a target. So enjoy your post-test training, enjoy your riding. Until next time, ride safe and take care.